Hey guys, tonight we are going to dive into the deep, dark, and wondrous waters of a world that might have been. Imagine, if you will, a vast blue expanse beneath a quiet moon, the surface a mirror for the stars. The air is still, save for the rhythmic lapping of waves against an unseen shore. But deep below, a new kind of silence reigns, punctuated by a sound like no other, the subtle, powerful thrum of a world-ending hunger. We're going to explore a question that feels both impossible and thrilling. What if the Mosasaurus never went extinct? What if, as you drift off to sleep tonight, somewhere out in the deep, a creature of immense power and prehistoric scale is swimming a ghost from an epoch long past, now a very real shadow on our horizon? It's a fun thought, but let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive a chance encounter. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you are in the world and what time it is for you right now as you settle in. For me, the clock ticks slowly forward and the moon is high above, watching over us all. Now close your eyes and let's descend into the deep. The ocean you see is a librarian of time. It holds stories not in books, but in the layers of sediment on its floor, in the very chemistry of its water, and in the echo of ancient life that still pulses within its currents. When we look out at the sea, we see a surface that appears to be living in the now, a fragile present moment. But that surface is a thin veil over a memory so deep and vast, it makes our own history seem like a passing thought. And within that memory, there are creatures that once ruled with an authority we can barely comprehend. One of them was the Mosasaurus, a name that evokes a kind of primal fear and awe, a name that feels less like a biological classification and more like a title of a monarch. Tonight we're going to open one of the ocean's oldest books and read the story of this king. Our journey begins in the late Cretaceous period, about 70 to 80 million years ago. Picture this as a time when the world was a different place entirely. The continents were in new positions, and the climate was warmer than it is today. A shallow sea, known as the Western Interior Seaway, split the North American continent in two. This was not a small body of water. It was a vast, sprawling ocean, teeming with life, a nursery, and a hunting ground for some of the most magnificent creatures to ever exist. And in this great sea, the Mosasaurus was the undisputed apex predator. It was a reptile, not a dinosaur, an air-breathing leviathan that moved through the water with a power and grace that would have been breathtaking to behold. To truly grasp the scale, we must consider the concept of deep time, a term geologists use to describe the immense, almost incomprehensible scale of geological history. Our human lives are a fleeting whisper against this backdrop. The Mosasaurus lived so long ago that the continents themselves were in different configurations. The very land you might be standing on now has been pushed up and eroded away multiple times since the last Mosasaurus drew a breath. The fossil record, those silent stone libraries of the past, tells us a great deal about these creatures. Their skeletons reveal a serpentine body, a powerful fluke tail, and a jaw that was a masterclass in predatory engineering. Unlike a crocodile, the Mosasaurus had a unique and terrifying adaptation, a second hinge on its lower jaw, which allowed it to swallow prey whole, even if that prey was much larger than its head. This is a scientific fact, a detail etched into the very bones of the fossils, yet it feels more like something from a mythical tale. But here's a beautiful and slightly unsettling thought. Despite all we've learned, the fossils can only tell us so much. They give us the blueprint, the physical facts, but they cannot tell us what it was like to be a Mosasaurus. We don't know the exact color of its skin or the patterns that might have adorned it. We don't know the nuances of its social life, if it had any. Did it hunt alone, a solitary king of the depths? Or did it move in family groups like modern orcas, sharing the burden of a hunt? The truth is, we don't really know for sure. This raises an interesting philosophical question. Are these gaps in our knowledge simply waiting to be filled by some future discovery? Or are they eternal mysteries lost forever to the vastness of deep time? We are left to piece together the tapestry of its life from the threads we have, filling in the missing colors with our own imagination and the best guesses of science. And tonight, that is exactly what we will do. Let's take a moment to consider the sheer physics of a Mosasaurus. The largest known species, Mosasaurus hoffmanii, could reach lengths of up to 17 meters, which is around 56 feet. To put that into perspective, that's roughly the size of a modern sperm whale. Now imagine a creature of that scale but with a more sleek and serpentine body, built not just for deep diving, but for rapid acceleration and terrifying bursts of speed. Its tail alone would have been a propulsion engine of immense force. Think of the amount of energy required to move such a mass through water, the caloric intake it would need just to survive. A creature of this size doesn't just exist, it fundamentally reshapes its environment simply by being there. Its movements would create currents. Its hunts would send ripples of fear through every level of the food chain, and its very presence would be a constant, looming threat. This is the world we are stepping into tonight. Not the prehistoric world, but our world with a single crucial change. We're going to imagine the impossible, but we're going to use the tools of science and history to make it as real as we can. We're going to let our imaginations be guided by what we know of the natural world of evolution and of the ocean itself. We are going to ask not just what if, but what then? What happens when a ghost from the Cretaceous becomes a living shadow in our modern sea, a secret kept by the immense quiet memory of the deep? As we peer into this hypothetical future, we must first confront the reality of its biology. A Mosasaurus was a reptile, but a highly specialized one. It was a squamate, meaning it was more closely related to modern lizards and snakes than to dinosaurs. This lineage gives us a hint about its physiology. For instance, many modern snakes possess Jacobson's organ, a specialized chemosensory organ on the roof of their mouth. They taste the air by flicking their forked tongues, collecting chemical particles and transferring them to this organ. It's a kind of enhanced sense of smell, allowing them to track prey. It's a little-known fact that some modern lizards and snakes use this incredibly advanced system. Could a Mosasaurus have possessed a similar organ, or perhaps an even more refined one, allowing it to taste the ocean currents for traces of blood or a distant meal? We don't have direct fossil evidence, but it's a fascinating possibility, suggesting a hunter so acutely aware of its environment that it could track a wounded fish from miles away. This leads us to a broader concept in biology: convergent evolution. This is the process where two unrelated species independently evolve similar traits to adapt to similar environments or ecological niches. Think of a shark, a dolphin, and an extinct ichthyosaur. All three have a streamlined body, a dorsal fin, and a powerful fluke tail. They evolved these features not because they are closely related, but because they all needed to be efficient swimmers in the open ocean. A Mosasaurus, though a reptile, filled a niche similar to a modern orca or great white shark. If it were to return, it wouldn't just be an interloper. It would be a new player in a game that has been running for millions of years without it. It would have to fit in, or it would have to dominate. The very air that it breathes would be a key to its existence. Unlike fish, which extract oxygen from water, the Mosasaurus, like a modern whale, would have to surface. This simple biological necessity changes everything. It means that no matter how deep it dives, no matter how vast its hunting grounds, it is always tethered to the surface, to the line where water meets air. And this is a line that humanity has mastered. Our ships, our submarines, our oil rigs, they all exist on or near this boundary. A Mosasaurus would be a constant, fleeting presence in a world of our making. We might not see it, but we would know it's there. The question of its breathing also brings up a strange, unsolved mystery in paleontology. How long could it hold its breath? Modern sperm whales can hold their breath for up to 90 minutes, Would a Mosasaurus have had similar adaptations? Or perhaps an even more efficient respiratory system? We don't know the answer, and it's a tantalizing gap in our understanding. It makes the Mosasaurus, even as a scientific subject, feel a little more mythical, a little more unknowable. As we imagine this colossal creature swimming through today's seas, we're not just bringing a monster back to life. We're also examining our own place in the natural world. For millions of years, the largest predators on Earth were not us. They were creatures like the Mosasaurus, who ruled with a quiet, undeniable authority. We have only been at the top of the food chain for a fleeting moment in deep time. Our technologies, our nets, our harpoons, our ships have made us the dominant force in the oceans. But what happens when we introduce a variable that our technology might not be able to so easily control? It forces us to confront a humbling truth. We are not the only powerful force on this planet. The ocean itself has a memory, and sometimes those memories resurface not as fossils, but as a living, breathing shadow beneath the waves. So let the image of this creature swim through your mind tonight, not as a monster from a movie, but as a biological reality, a powerful echo from a time when the world was wilder and our place in it was far less certain. Let the quiet hum of your own thoughts mix with the imagined pulse of its powerful tail and the gentle lapping of waves on a distant shore. The journey we're on is not just about a creature. It's about the nature of time itself, the interconnectedness of all life, and the enduring mystery of the ocean's deep, quiet heart. We're just getting started, so settle in, and let's see what else the memory of the sea has to tell us. We left off with the image of a creature so vast and powerful that its very existence reshapes the world around it. We pictured the ghost of a Mosasaurus, now a living shadow in our oceans. But a ghost does not simply appear. Its presence would be felt first, a subtle shift in the great complex machine of the sea. It would begin not with a roar or dramatic sighting, but with a quiet disturbance, a shadow on the horizon that few would even notice at first. Think of the ocean as a great living tapestry woven from countless threads of life. Each thread is a species, a current, a chemical process. The Mosasaurus was one of the strongest threads in the Cretaceous tapestry, but when it vanished, the pattern was rewoven. New threads, new species like sharks and whales grew stronger and took its place. The modern ocean is a finished work, beautiful and intricate in its own right. But what happens when you introduce a thread from an entirely different age, a thread so thick and strong it begins to pull and unravel the existing pattern? The initial signs would be almost imperceptible to us, living on the surface, but to the ocean itself, it would be a tremor. Perhaps it would begin with a strange lack of a certain type of fish in a specific region. A fishery might report a sudden sharp decline in tuna or large billfish species that are themselves powerful predators. They would blame overfishing, climate change, or shifting currents. But deep below, something else would be at play. The Mosasaurus, a creature of immense hunger, would be a harvester of the sea on a scale we can't fully grasp. A single individual could consume hundreds of pounds of meat a day. It would be a living void in the food chain, a gravitational pull that draws everything into it. It's a fundamental principle of ecology. Every ecosystem has a carrying capacity, a limit to how many organisms it can support. The introduction of a new massive apex predator would immediately throw this delicate balance into chaos. We can look to modern examples to understand this. Consider what happened when wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone National Park. It wasn't just the elk population that changed. The entire ecosystem was transformed. Elk began to graze in different areas, which allowed aspen and willow trees to grow, which in turn brought back beavers. The rivers themselves changed course because of the new vegetation. This phenomenon is known as a trophic cascade, a ripple effect through the food web caused by the removal or addition of a top-level predator. Now imagine that on a global oceanic scale. The Mosasaurus's return would be a trophic cascade of unimaginable proportions, a quiet reset button for the planet's largest ecosystem. But why would it be so subtle at first? Because the ocean is so vast and our presence in it is so limited, we are creatures of the land and the surface. We have mapped the contours of the seafloor and we understand the currents, but we have only glimpsed a tiny fraction of the life that lives within the deep. The Mosasaurus would be a master of this unseen world. It would operate in the great dark expanses, far from our shipping lanes and our coastal cities. It would be an echo, a rumor, a fisherman's tale of a catch that tore a line with impossible force, or a scientist's strange reading on a sonar screen. This raises another beautiful, unsettling mystery. How would we even identify it as a Mosasaurus? What would be the first definitive sign? Perhaps it would be a satellite image, a fleeting glimpse of an impossibly large shape moving beneath the waves. Or maybe a drone sent to inspect an anomaly captures a brief blurred video of a massive tail fin disappearing into the gloom. We're used to seeing sharks and whales, creatures that are a familiar part of our world. But to see a Mosasaurus, a shape that we know only from the fossil record, would be a moment of profound cognitive dissonance. It would be like seeing a living dinosaur walking down a city street. The sheer impossibility of it would challenge our understanding of what is real and what is not. This is where science and the human imagination collide. The scientific method demands evidence, repeatability, and peer review. But an event like this would be a single, non-repeatable observation. It would test the limits of our trust in our own eyes and our own instruments. We would have to ask ourselves, are we seeing what we think we're seeing, or is our mind playing tricks on us? The possibility of a hoax would be immense. For a time, the Mosasaurus would exist not as a biological fact, but as a modern myth, a cryptid for the 21st century. We also have to consider the incredible diversity of the modern ocean. There are still countless species that we have yet to discover. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the deepest parts of our own oceans. This is a scientific fact that many people don't fully grasp. The abyssal plains, the vast lightless territories that make up most of our planet, are a blank slate in many ways. Could a Mosasaurus have survived all this time hiding in these lightless depths? Could a population of them have found refuge in a geothermal vent system, or in a deep isolated trench where they were protected from the great extinction event that wiped out their relatives on the surface? This brings us to a little-known but fascinating scientific principle, the Lazarus taxon. This is a term used by paleontologists to describe species that were thought to have gone extinct but are later rediscovered alive. The most famous example is the coelacanth, a fish that was thought to have died out with the dinosaurs, but was rediscovered in 1938. The coelacanth is a living fossil, a creature that has survived unchanged for millions of years. Could the Mosasaurus be a Lazarus taxon on a much grander scale? It's a romantic and improbable thought, but it's not entirely outside the realm of scientific possibility, especially in the vast unexplored reaches of the ocean. So as we imagine this shadow on the horizon, we must remember that it is a shadow, not just of a physical creature, but of a possibility. It is the shadow of a forgotten past, an unseen present, and an uncertain future. It is a reminder that our maps of the world are incomplete, that our understanding is a work in progress, and that the greatest mysteries of our planet might not be in the stars, but in the dark water just beyond our reach. We have only just begun to see the first ripples. As we move forward, we will have to ask ourselves what this shadow means for us, for our technology, and for the very idea of humanity's place as the undisputed master of the world. The ocean, with its deep memory, is slowly beginning to reveal its secret, and that secret is a truth so profound, it might just change everything. The shadow on the horizon, the subtle shift in the great oceanic tapestry. These are the first hints of our ancient visitor. But to truly understand the impact of a Mosasaurus returning to our world, we must move beyond the metaphor and confront the cold, hard science of its scale. It's one thing to say a creature is big. It's another to grasp what that size truly means, to feel the weight of it, the immense gravity of its presence. Tonight, we'll explore the tyranny of scale, the beautiful and brutal logic that dictates how a colossal body functions in a world not built for it. Let's begin with the basics of allometric scaling. This is a core concept in biology that describes how a creature's physical traits and physiological processes change as its size increases. It's not a simple one-to-one relationship. If you were to take a mouse and simply scale it up to the size of an elephant, it would collapse under its own weight. Its bones would be too thin, its heart too small to pump blood to its brain, its skin too fragile. The larger an animal gets, the more its body must change to support that size. This is the tyranny of scale. A Mosasaurus, a creature that could reach 50 feet or more in length, was a masterclass in overcoming this tyranny. Its body was a finely tuned machine, a monument to evolutionary engineering. Think about the sheer force required to move that much mass through the water. The Mosasaurus didn't have a simple fish-like tail. Its tail was a massive crescent-shaped fluke, similar to a shark or a whale. This isn't a coincidence. It's an example of convergent evolution, as we discussed before. A powerful fluke allows for incredible bursts of speed and sustained cruising. The muscle required to power such a tail would have been immense, a thick, dense mass of contractile tissue. Its spine, in turn, had to be a masterpiece of biomechanics, a flexible but unyielding rod that could transfer that power from the tail to the rest of the body without breaking. And what about its head? We mentioned the double-hinged jaw, an adaptation for swallowing large prey. But the rest of the skull was just as remarkable. The jaw muscles would have been incredibly powerful, capable of generating crushing forces. We can understand this through a little-known but fascinating scientific fact, the bite force quotient. This is a measure of an animal's bite force relative to its body size. While we can't measure the bite force of a living Mosasaurus, we can make educated guesses based on its skull and the bite marks it left on prey. We know that some of the largest Mosasaurus species had a bite force that would dwarf even the largest great white shark. It would have been an instrument of absolute devastating power, capable of crushing bone and shell with ease. This kind of power is a necessary part of the allometric scaling of a top predator. A larger body needs to be able to consume larger prey, and to do that, it needs a more powerful bite. But scale isn't just about power, it's also about physiology. A creature this large would be a fascinating biological puzzle. For instance, how did it regulate its body temperature? Most modern reptiles are cold-blooded or ectothermic, relying on external sources of heat. But an animal as large as a Mosasaurus has a very high volume to surface area ratio. This means it loses heat very slowly. Scientists have long wondered if creatures like the Mosasaurus and the ichthyosaurs might have been partially warm-blooded or endothermic, a biological state known as mesothermy. This is a beautiful hybrid state where the animal generates its own body heat, but not as efficiently as a true mammal or bird. It's a scientific mystery we may never fully solve, but the evidence points to it. The high metabolic demands of an apex predator would make ectothermy difficult. Imagine trying to hunt in cold, deep water if you needed to sunbathe for hours to warm up. It just doesn't make sense. If the Mosasaurus were a mesotherm, it would be a tireless hunter, a perpetual engine of hunger, capable of operating in a wide range of temperatures. The tyranny of scale also applies to its respiratory system. A creature of this size needs a massive amount of oxygen. When it surfaces to breathe, it would take in a huge volume of air. But how efficient was its lung system? Did it have a simple sac-like lung, or was it more complex with multiple chambers? Again, we can look to modern animals for clues. Whales have incredibly efficient lungs and a circulatory system built to withstand immense pressure and to store oxygen for long periods. It's a fair guess that the Mosasaurus had similar adaptations, but we don't know for sure. The internal soft tissues of these creatures are lost to time, leaving us with another profound gap in our knowledge. This is a recurring theme in paleontology. The bones tell us a story of size and power, but the flesh and blood of the creature are left to our imagination and our best scientific guesses. Now let's bring this all back to our modern world. If a creature of this scale were to suddenly appear in our oceans, the physical reality would be staggering. A Mosasaurus doesn't just swim, it displaces an enormous volume of water. The currents it creates, the pressure waves it generates would be unlike anything we've ever experienced from a marine animal. A great white shark's movement is a powerful, elegant thing. A Mosasaurus's movement would be more like a submarine, a physical force that moves with purpose. The smaller creatures of the sea would not just fear it, they would feel its presence as a physical disturbance, a low-frequency hum that vibrates through the water, a silent alarm that signals a coming threat. This is a scientific concept known as the bow wave effect, where a large moving object creates a pressure wave in front of it. For a Mosasaurus, that bow wave would be a wall of pressure, a warning to every creature in its path. This is the tyranny of scale made real. The Mosasaurus's size isn't just a number, it is a physical and biological reality that dictates its life and its impact. It is a constant reminder that in the grand scheme of things, we are small and the ocean is vast. We have built our world on the assumption that we are the biggest, the most powerful. The return of a Mosasaurus would challenge that assumption in the most fundamental way, forcing us to rethink our place in the marine world. It would be a living, breathing testament to the fact that even in our modern technological age, there are forces at play that operate on a scale that makes our own seem insignificant. And as we drift to sleep, we can take comfort in the knowledge that for now, the tyranny of that scale remains safely locked in the pages of history, a memory in the ocean's deep, quiet mind. But what if it isn't? The tyranny of scale, as we've explored, is a cold, scientific fact. The Mosasaurus was a physical engine of immense power, a biological machine built for a singular purpose to hunt and to feed. But to truly understand its return, we must move past the biomechanics and into the realm of behavior. We must ask what this new kind of hunger means for the modern ocean. A creature of this size doesn't just hunt. It fundamentally changes the very nature of hunting. Imagine the deep ocean not as an empty void, but as a silent, bustling metropolis. There are highways of migrating fish, great schools that move in unison like living clouds. There are bustling neighborhoods around underwater volcanic vents and quiet solitary corners in the abyssal plains. For millions of years, the predators in this metropolis, the sharks, the orcas, the great tunas, have followed a set of unspoken rules, a balance of power and consumption. They are all players in an intricate game. The Mosasaurus would be a new kind of player, a force of nature that doesn't play by the old rules. Its hunger would be a constant driving force. We can infer from its size and physiology that its metabolism would be high, requiring an enormous caloric intake. A single Mosasaurus might need to consume the equivalent of a small car in food every week. Where would this food come from? The most obvious answer is the largest, most calorie-rich prey available: modern marine mammals like whales, dolphins, and seals. This is a scientific concept we call niche overlap. The Mosasaurus would not be filling an empty niche. It would be directly competing with other apex predators, most notably the great white shark and the orca. This is where the story gets truly interesting. The orca, or killer whale, is a fascinating case study. It's a highly intelligent social animal that hunts in family groups using complex communication and cooperative strategies. They are the top of the food chain in many parts of the world. Now imagine an orcapod coming across a single Mosasaurus. This wouldn't be a simple fight between predator and prey. This would be a collision between two different worlds, two different evolutionary strategies. The Mosasaurus, a solitary hunter, by all accounts, relies on brute force and ambush. The orca relies on strategy, communication, and teamwork. Who would win? It's a scientific puzzle, and the answer isn't clear. The Mosasaurus has the advantage of sheer size and physical power, a jaw built for destruction. The orca has the advantage of a highly evolved brain, a social structure, and a collective intelligence that allows it to outsmart its prey. But the Mosasaurus's hunger wouldn't just affect the top of the food chain. It would have a ripple effect throughout the entire ecosystem, a process known as a trophic cascade, which we briefly touched on earlier. If a Mosasaurus began to prey on whales, it would reduce the amount of biomass available for other scavengers. It might also force other predators to change their hunting grounds or their prey. A reduction in whale numbers could have a huge impact on the deep-sea ecosystem, as whale falls, the carcasses that sink to the ocean floor, are a major source of food for a host of deep-sea creatures. The Mosasaurus, by its very existence, would be a disruptive force, a powerful stone thrown into the still waters of a well-balanced pond. This brings us to a little-known but fascinating scientific fact about the nature of predation, the Red Queen hypothesis. Named after a character in Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass, this hypothesis suggests that species must constantly adapt and evolve just to maintain their place in the ecosystem, let alone to get ahead. It's a constant arms race between predator and prey. The prey evolves better defenses, and the predator evolves better ways to hunt. The Mosasaurus comes from a time when the prey was different and the rules were different. When it returns, it is an entirely new piece in this ancient chess game. The modern creatures of our world have never encountered a predator quite like it. How would a sea turtle, for example, which has evolved for millions of years to deal with sharks, react to a creature with a crushing double-hinged jaw? It's a question that science can't answer, but we can explore the possibilities. The truth is, we don't know exactly what the Mosasaurus's diet was like. While we have fossilized remains of stomach contents, they give us only a snapshot in time. We know they ate fish ammonites and even other marine reptiles. But the modern ocean is a very different place. Would it adapt its diet to the new available prey? Or would it seek out the most familiar food sources, the ones that most closely resemble its ancient diet? This is a fundamental question of behavioral biology, one that would be answered not in a laboratory, but in the great wild laboratory of the ocean itself. This new hunger is not just a biological drive, it's a philosophical one. The Mosasaurus is a symbol of a wild, untamed world that we thought was long gone. We, as humans, have grown accustomed to our role as the ultimate predator. We have tamed the land, and we have exerted our dominance over the seas. But the return of a Mosasaurus would be a humbling experience. It would remind us that there are forces at play that operate on a different scale entirely. Forces that are indifferent to our technology, our politics, and our dreams. The Mosasaurus is a kind of living paradox, a creature of pure instinctual hunger in a world that believes it has moved past the age of monsters. It would be a mirror reflecting our own vulnerability, back to us a profound and unsettling truth in the quiet of the deep. The ripple effect of this new hunger would be felt not just in the food chain, but in the very consciousness of a species that thought it had tamed the world. The new hunger, the new kind of predator, brings us to the most fascinating question of all. How would it think we can measure its bite force? We can estimate its size and speed, but we are left with the profound mystery of its mind. Tonight, we will dive into the behavioral patterns of the Mosasaurus, using the tools of comparative zoology and our knowledge of modern marine life to imagine the inner world of the deep blue's new monarch. To do this, we must first confront a core scientific concept, the evolution of intelligence. Intelligence is not a single monolithic thing. It's a spectrum of abilities from the simple instinctual behaviors of a fish to the complex social structures of a human. The Mosasaurus as a reptile is an interesting case study. Most people associate reptile intelligence with the cold, unthinking gaze of a crocodile or the simple brain of a lizard. But the Mosasaurus was a very different kind of reptile, one that lived and hunted in a complex three-dimensional environment. its brain was likely larger and more complex than its land-based relatives. It had to navigate vast distances, track fast-moving prey, and make split-second decisions in a world with no place to hide. This suggests a level of cognitive ability far beyond what we might expect. Consider the modern orca, a creature we know to be incredibly intelligent. They have a complex social structure they teach their young how to hunt, and they even have unique dialects that vary from pod to pod. Their intelligence is a product of their environment and their lifestyle. They are cooperative hunters, and their survival depends on their ability to work together. Would a Mosasaurus have developed a similar kind of intelligence? It's unlikely. From the fossil evidence, the Mosasaurus appears to have been a solitary predator. Its body was built for individual ambush and brute force, not for the coordinated tactics of a pack hunter. It was an individualist, a lone wolf of the sea. This doesn't mean it wasn't intelligent. There is a little-known scientific fact about reptile intelligence that challenges our assumptions. Recent studies have shown that some modern reptiles, like monitor lizards, are capable of complex problem-solving. They can learn from their mistakes, and some can even count. So the Mosasaurus's brain, though different from a mammal's, would likely have been a highly evolved instrument for its specific needs. Its intelligence would have been a kind of cold, calculating cunning, an intuitive understanding of currents, prey behavior, and the topography of the seafloor. It would be an intelligence of pure predation, a mind honed by millions of years of hunting in the great empty expanses of the ancient sea. This raises a fascinating and unsettling question about consciousness. We often associate consciousness with self-awareness, with the ability to reflect on one's own existence. But what about the consciousness of a creature that exists in a world of pure, unthinking instinct? Would a Mosasaurus have a concept of self? Or would it be a living machine, a perfect hunter with no inner life? No thoughts beyond the simple, powerful impulse to eat and to survive. The truth is, we don't really know for sure. It's one of the great unanswered questions of biology: where does instinct end and consciousness begin? The Mosasaurus, if it were to return, would be a living embodiment of this philosophical dilemma. It would be a creature we could observe, but whose inner world would remain a complete mystery, a mind as vast and unknowable as the ocean it inhabits. So let's try to imagine its behavioral patterns. How would it interact with its environment? We can infer that it would be a master of the ambush. Its serpentine body, built for speed, would allow it to hide in the shadows of great underwater canyons, waiting for an unsuspecting pod of whales to pass by. It would be a creature of patience and explosive violence, but it wouldn't be mindless. A Mosasaurus would have to learn and adapt. It would learn the migration routes of its prey. It would learn to avoid the territories of other powerful predators. It would learn to navigate the ever-changing landscape of the ocean, from the warm sunlit surface to the cold, crushing blackness of the deep. Its knowledge would be a kind of living map and intuitive understanding of the world, woven into the very fabric of its being. The idea of the Mosasaurus as a monarch is a poetic one, but it also has a basis in science. In many ecosystems, the top predator is a keystone species, a species that has a disproportionately large effect on its natural environment relative to its abundance. The presence of a keystone species is crucial to maintaining the health and diversity of an ecosystem. The return of a Mosasaurus would not just add a new predator, it would create a new kind of order, a new hierarchy in the sea. It would be a new kind of monarch, ruling not through command, but through the simple, brutal reality of its immense power. Its reign would be silent, its decrees written in the movements of the great schools of fish and the terrified flight of the seals. This is a beautiful, terrifying thought. It reminds us that there are forces at play in the world that are indifferent to our presence. The Mosasaurus is not a monster in the moral sense. It is not evil or malevolent. It is simply a creature of its time, a biological machine designed for survival. Its return would not be an act of aggression. It would simply be an act of being. It would force us to confront the fact that the world is not always a friendly place, and that there are parts of it that will forever remain wild and untamable. As we lie here tonight, and as the great dark ocean shifts and breathes, we can imagine this new monarch swimming alone in the vast silence, a mind as deep and unknowable as the water around it. And in that, there is a strange and profound kind of peace. We have explored the physical reality of the Mosasaurus's return, its tyrannical scale, its new kind of hunger, and the cold calculating cunning of its mind. But the ocean is not just a stage for biological drama. It's a world of pure sensation. The deep blue is a place of pressure and temperature of currents, and a profound enveloping darkness. To truly understand our ancient visitor, we must ask how it would perceive this world and how it would interact with a force it never evolved to contend with our technology. Tonight we will delve into the sensory world of the Mosasaurus, a world of deep silence and the silent challenge of echolocation. The Mosasaurus's eyes, like those of many marine predators, were likely large and adapted for seeing in the dim light of the deep. But sight in the ocean, especially in the murky coastal waters or the crushing blackness of the abyss, is a limited sense. Sound, on the other hand, travels over 4 times faster in water than it does in air. It is the primary way that many marine animals navigate, communicate, and hunt. Think of the complex symphony of the ocean, the clicks and whistles of dolphins, the low, mournful songs of whales, the crackle of snapping shrimp. The Mosasaurus would have been a listener in this grand choir, its inner ear a finely tuned instrument for hearing the vibrations of a distant meal or the approach of a rival. But what about its other senses? We can turn to modern examples for clues. The great white shark, for instance, has a fascinating biological adaptation, the ampullae of Lorenzini. These are specialized electroreceptors that allow the shark to detect the tiny electrical fields generated by the muscle contractions of its prey. It's a kind of sixth sense, a living compass that points to a hidden meal even in complete darkness. Did the Mosasaurus have a similar sense? It's a beautiful, unanswered question. As a reptile, it's not in the same lineage as a shark, but the pressures of its environment, the need to hunt effectively in low-light conditions, might have driven it to evolve a similar solution. We don't have fossil evidence of soft tissues, of course, but the possibility is a tantalizing one. It suggests a hunter so complete in its senses that it could track a creature not just by its sound or its scent, but by the very electricity of its living heart. This leads us to a core scientific concept that is little known outside of specialized fields, magnetoreception. This is the ability of some animals to sense the Earth's magnetic field and use it for navigation. Sea turtles and migratory birds are known to have this ability. The Earth's magnetic field is a vast invisible highway, a guidepost that has existed for billions of years. A Mosasaurus, a creature that would have roamed immense stretches of the open ocean, would have been a master of this highway. It would have had a deep intuitive understanding of the world's invisible magnetic map, a kind of inbuilt GPS that guided it across the featureless expanses of the ancient seas. This is not a flight of fancy. It's a sound scientific guess based on the needs of a migratory marine creature of its scale. Now let's introduce the great challenge to this ancient sensory world, our technology. For the past century, we have filled the oceans with a new kind of soundscape. The low-frequency rumble of shipping vessels, the high-pitched sonar pings of our submarines, the sharp, percussive blasts of seismic surveys used for oil and gas exploration. For a Mosasaurus, a creature that relied on the natural sounds and vibrations of the ocean, this new symphony would be a profound and disorienting cacophony. It would be like trying to navigate a quiet forest while a fleet of fighter jets roared overhead. This is where the silent challenge of echolocation comes in. Many marine mammals, like dolphins and whales, use echolocation, the emission of sound waves, and the interpretation of the returning echoes to perceive their environment. Our own sonar technology works on the same principle. A Mosasaurus as a reptile would not have had this ability. Its senses were likely more passive, more about listening and feeling, than actively probing the environment with sound. This creates an interesting dynamic. Our sonar pings those sharp high-frequency pulses would be an alien signal to the Mosasaurus. They would be a noise that had no place in its ancient sensory vocabulary, a sound that it couldn't interpret as a threat or a meal. This raises an interesting question. Would the Mosasaurus see our technology as a threat? Or would it be more like a giant, incomprehensible rock in its path? Our submarines with their quiet hums and their strange metallic exteriors would be unlike any living creature it had ever encountered. Would it be curious aggressive? Or would it simply avoid us a strange new part of the world that had no place in its ancient hunting grounds? The truth is, we don't really know for sure. The interaction between a mind honed by millions of years of natural selection and a technology that has only existed for a fleeting moment in deep time is one of the great unknowns of this hypothetical scenario. It's a collision of worlds, a meeting of the primeval and the technological, with an outcome that is completely unpredictable. As we drift off to sleep, let us imagine the quiet, dark world beneath the waves. Let us imagine the gentle hum of our own machines, the rhythmic thrum of a far-off ship, a sound that has become so commonplace to us. And then, let us imagine a creature from a time before these sounds existed, a mind that lives in a world of silence currents and the beautiful, elegant hum of its own being. It's a world we can only guess at a sensory landscape as mysterious and profound as the creature itself. We've journeyed through the deep blue exploring the Mosasaurus's biology, its hunger, its mind, and its alien sensory world. Now, as we surface from these imaginative depths, we must confront the most immediate and profound impact of its return, the quiet dread that would settle upon our coastlines. For humanity, the ocean is a place of comfort and recreation, a place for fishing, for swimming, for sailing. But what happens when the shoreline, that familiar boundary between our world and the deep, becomes a place of fear? Think of our coastal communities, those vibrant, bustling towns that thrive on their proximity to the sea. They are built on an unspoken assumption of safety. We've come to believe that the greatest threats from the ocean are natural disasters like tsunamis or hurricanes, or perhaps the rare shark attack. The idea of a living, breathing leviathan from a bygone era, one that is perfectly capable of hunting in coastal waters, is a complete rewriting of this assumption. It would be a profound shift in our collective psyche, a return to a kind of primal fear that we thought we had long outgrown. The first signs of this quiet dread would not be dramatic. It wouldn't be a scene from a Hollywood movie. It would be a subtle, creeping unease. Perhaps a beach would be closed, not because of a shark sighting, but because of a mysterious, unidentifiable shape seen in the shallow water. A local fisherman would report a huge gash in his net, a gash so large and so powerful that it could only have been caused by something immense. The fear would be born not of a direct attack, but of the unknown. It would be the kind of fear that whispers to you when you look out at the dark water at night, a feeling that something is out there, just beyond the reach of the lamplight. This is where the concept of collective memory comes into play. Collective memory is the shared pool of knowledge, information, and ideas in a social group. For us, the collective memory of the ocean is of a world we can master and enjoy. The Mosasaurus, however, would be a new kind of entry in that memory. It would be a modern myth, a cryptid made real. Our stories and our science would begin to tell a new tale, the tale of a place that is no longer entirely our own. This fear would be contagious, spreading from fisherman to surfer, from coastal town to global news network. It would change the way we interact with the sea in a fundamental way. Now let's consider the practical challenges. A Mosasaurus would be a threat to shipping. A collision with a creature that large and powerful would be catastrophic for a small vessel. Its presence would force us to rethink our maritime security and our search and rescue operations. But the most significant impact would be on our food supply. Commercial fishing fleets, which are the primary source of seafood for billions of people, would be operating in a new kind of risk environment. The Mosasaurus, a master hunter of the open ocean, would likely see these fishing fleets not as a threat, but as a dinner bell. The sound of their engines and their sonar would be a beacon, a signal that a massive congregation of potential food is in a specific location. This raises a fascinating and unsettling scientific question. Would the Mosasaurus associate our ships with a food source? We know that modern predators can learn to associate human activity with food. Some sharks have learned to follow fishing boats to feed on the discarded catch. Would a Mosasaurus with its cold calculating cunning be able to do the same? It's a plausible, if terrifying thought. Its presence would not only be a threat to our fishing industry, but it would also be a constant reminder of our own fragile place in the great oceanic food chain. This brings us to a specific and little-known scientific fact, the basking shark paradox. The basking shark is the second largest fish in the world, a colossal gentle giant that feeds on plankton. For a long time, scientists were baffled by its calm, predictable behavior. It was so large and so slow that it seemed to be an easy target for predators. But the paradox is that no predator, not even a great white shark, dares to attack a basking shark. The sheer size and power of the animal, even in its passive state, is enough to deter any potential threat. The Mosasaurus would be a living embodiment of this paradox, but on a predatory scale. Its presence, its size, and its raw power would make it a creature to be avoided by all a true monarch of the sea that rules not through aggression, but through the simple reality of its own existence. The coastline, that thin, fragile line of sand and stone, would become a new kind of frontier. It would be a line between a world we control and a world that we can only gaze at with a renewed sense of awe and dread. The Mosasaurus would force us to confront a humbling truth that our world is not just a place for us to live and play, but a vast, wild place with its own rules, its own history, and its own deep, powerful secrets. As you lay in your bed tonight, let us imagine that thin line of sand and the quiet, unending dread that would settle upon it, a feeling as old as time and as new as the morning tide. We have imagined the Mosasaurus's return in all its physical and psychological grandeur. We have felt the quiet dread it would inspire along our coastlines. But now we must step back from this immediate drama and ask a more fundamental question. A question that reaches back not just 70 million years, but to the very beginning of life itself. We must ask about the unseen hand of evolution, the long, slow, relentless process that created the Mosasaurus in the first place, and the philosophical question of whether such a creature could ever evolve again. Evolution is not a conscious process. It is a blind mechanical force, a slow, patient sculptor that works with the raw materials of time, chance, and necessity. It doesn't have a plan or a destination. It simply selects for traits that allow a creature to survive and reproduce in a specific environment. The Mosasaurus, in all its power and predatory glory, was a product of this process. It was a reptile that returned to the sea, and in doing so, it became the undisputed king of its domain. Its powerful fluke, its double-hinged jaw, its immense size. These were all adaptations, beautiful and brutal solutions to the problem of survival in the ancient oceans. This leads us to a central concept in evolutionary biology, adaptive radiation. This is the process by which a single ancestral species diversifies into a multitude of new species, each adapted to a unique ecological niche. The Mosasaurus and its relatives were a product of an adaptive radiation event that began after the extinction of the ichthyosaurs and pliosaurs, creating an opportunity for a new kind of marine predator to fill the void. The Mosasaurus evolved to fill that specific role to become the apex predator of the late Cretaceous seas. It was a perfect, elegant solution to a specific environmental problem. But what if the clock were reset? What if we were to turn back the hands of time and let the tape of life play again? This is a famous thought experiment posed by the paleontologist Stephen Jay Gould, known as the replaying the tape of life hypothesis. Gould argued that if we were to replay the tape from a certain point, the outcome would be completely different. The specific random events of history, a volcanic eruption here, a chance mutation there, are so crucial that the end result would be an entirely new set of species. The Mosasaurus, in this view, was a one-off and unrepeatable masterpiece of evolution. A creature like it would never evolve again because the specific environmental and genetic conditions that led to its existence would never be replicated. However, there is a counter-argument, a little-known scientific fact about evolution that challenges this view. This is the concept of phylogenetic constraint, which suggests that the evolutionary path of a species is limited by its genetic history. A creature's past, its ancient lineage, dictates the kind of future it can have. The Mosasaurus was a reptile that evolved from terrestrial lizards. Its body plan, its fundamental DNA, was a reptile's. This meant it could never evolve into a creature with gills or a completely different kind of skeleton. Its evolutionary path, while flexible, was constrained by its deep past. This suggests that while a new Mosasaurus might not evolve a new kind of marine reptile, a new kind of top predator with similar adaptations is not entirely impossible. The ocean, with its specific pressures and its universal laws of physics, will always select for certain traits a streamlined body, a powerful tail, and ability to hunt in the deep. This raises an interesting philosophical question about the nature of life itself. Is there a certain inevitability to evolution? Are there certain solutions that are so elegant, so perfect, that they will always reappear even in different forms? Is the idea of a top marine predator, a huge, powerful hunter, a kind of eternal archetype that will always reemerge no matter how many times the tape of life is replayed? The truth is, we don't really know for sure. The Mosasaurus, in this sense, is not just a biological creature. It is a living symbol of this profound and unresolved debate. It is an echo from the deep testament to the fact that the forces that shaped our world are still at play, and that the long, slow, unseen hand of evolution continues to work, carving out new forms and new destinies in the raw material of life. As we drift off tonight, let us contemplate the beautiful, brutal logic of this process. Let us imagine not just the Mosasaurus, but the immense unseen forces that brought it into being. It is a humbling thought. It reminds us that our world is not a static place, but a living, breathing canvas of change, and that the stories of the past are not just history. They are a guide to the unpredictable and wondrous possibilities of the future. The Mosasaurus as a concept is a beautiful and elegant proof of this truth. We have imagined the Mosasaurus as a biological machine, a silent hunter, a living fossil. But every living thing exists within a larger conversation, a symphony of sounds and signals that defines its world. For us, that symphony is a chorus of voices, music, and the low hum of our cities. For the Mosasaurus, it would be a very different kind of music, a composition of the ocean's own making. Tonight we will explore the symphony of unfamiliar sounds it might create, and what these sounds could tell us about its inner life. The ocean, as we've discussed, is a world defined by sound. But what does a Mosasaurus sound like? We can't know for sure, of course. The soft tissues required to produce and receive sound are long gone, but we can make some educated guesses based on a fascinating concept in biology: sound production in reptiles. While many reptiles are relatively quiet, some, like crocodiles, produce a variety of vocalizations. Crocodiles, for instance, have a unique ability to produce low-frequency infrasound, a sound so low that it's below the range of human hearing. They use this infrasound to communicate with each other over long distances, a kind of silent, seismic language that travels through both water and land. It's a little-known scientific fact that this infrasound can cause the surface of the water to vibrate, a phenomenon known as a water dance, where the water literally ripples in response to the crocodile's call. Now imagine a creature the size of a Mosasaurus with a similar ability. Its infrasonic calls would not just be a whisper. They would be a low, powerful thrum that vibrates through the very bones of the ocean. It would be a sound that could travel for hundreds, if not thousands of miles, a kind of deep resonant communication that would define its territory and its presence. This would be the true voice of the deep blue's new monarch, a sound that we couldn't hear with our ears, but that we might be able to detect with our most sensitive seismic equipment. It would be a ghost in the machine, a signal of life from a time before our own. But what would it be saying? This leads us to a profound and unsettling mystery in science animal language. We have long known that many animals communicate with each other. But the question of whether they have a true language, a system of communication with syntax and meaning, is still a subject of intense debate. We know that dolphins have names for each other, and that orcas have unique dialects. The Mosasaurus, as a solitary predator, would likely not have had the complex social language of a dolphin or an orca. But it would have had a language of some kind, a series of calls and signals that communicated its intentions. It might have a different call for hunting, a different one for territorial display, and a different one for attracting a mate. The symphony of its life would be a series of these calls, a narrative woven into the very fabric of the ocean's soundscape. The return of a Mosasaurus would force us to confront this mystery in a new and profound way. We would be listening for a voice that has been silent for 70 million years, trying to decipher a language that was born in an ancient, forgotten world. Our hydrophones, our sonar equipment, and our deep-sea listening stations would become our ears, and the Mosasaurus's calls would be our new Rosetta Stone, a key to a new kind of understanding. We would be listening not just for a sound, but for a meaning, a glimpse into a mind that is as alien to us as a creature from another planet. This is a beautiful and humbling thought. It reminds us that our own language, our own symphony of words and ideas, is just one of many. The Earth is a planet of 1,000 languages, from the complex song of the humpback whale to the quiet seismic calls of the crocodile and the unheard infrasonic hum of the planet itself. The Mosasaurus, in this sense, would be a new kind of storyteller, a new kind of poet, its words written in the deep resonant vibrations of the water. Its symphony would not be one of human music, but one of pure, raw existence, a conversation between a creature and the great silent breathing heart of the ocean. And as you drift off to sleep tonight, you can imagine that sound, that deep resonant hum, a kind of lullaby from a world that once was and that might still be, the symphony of the Mosasaurus. The infrasonic hum of its existence is a sound from a different age, but sound, like light and matter, is woven into a greater fabric, the fabric of time itself. We have been traveling through this fabric, moving from the ancient past to the uncertain present. Tonight we will pause and reflect on this grand tapestry, using a beautiful metaphor to understand the deep connections between the prehistoric and the now. Imagine time not as a straight line, but as a vast, intricate tapestry. Every moment that has ever existed, from the first star igniting in the cosmos to the quiet breath you just took, is a single thread in this monumental work. The past is not gone. It is simply a part of the tapestry that has already been woven. The Mosasaurus, in this metaphor, is a bold, striking thread from an ancient corner of the fabric. It is a vibrant color, a powerful pattern that defines a particular section of the whole. When it went extinct, that thread didn't vanish. It simply became a part of the finished work, a memory in the weave. This is a poetic way of understanding a core scientific concept, the principle of uniformitarianism. This principle, first proposed by geologist James Hutton, suggests that the same geological and biological processes that operate in the present have also operated in the past. It's the idea that the laws of physics and chemistry haven't changed. The forces that shaped the Mosasaurus' natural selection, environmental pressures, the slow, unseen hand of evolution, are the very same forces that shape the world around us today. The tapestry of time is woven with the same looms and the same threads, only the patterns have changed. And what a beautiful, strange thought this is. It means that when we look at the modern ocean, We are not just looking at a new work of art. We are looking at a continuation of the same piece. The modern sharks and whales with their streamlined bodies and powerful tails are simply new patterns woven with old threads. The memory of the Mosasaurus is not just in the fossil record. It is in the very DNA of the ocean itself. It is a powerful silent influence that continues to shape the world, even in its absence. But let's take this metaphor a step further and connect it to a specific and little-known scientific fact, the Novikov self-consistency principle. This is a concept from theoretical physics that suggests that if time travel were possible, it would be impossible to change the past. Any action you took would be self-consistent, meaning it would already be woven into the fabric of time. For example, if you went back in time to prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother, you would fail. Something would happen, a chance encounter, a missed bus that would ensure the original timeline remains intact. The tapestry in this view is a finished work, and every thread, no matter how much you might want to pull it, is fixed in its place. This principle, though, applied to time travel, has a profound philosophical implication for our journey tonight. The Mosasaurus, as a creature of the past, is a fixed point in time's tapestry. Our thought experiment: what if it were still alive is a beautiful, impossible dream. It's a way of exploring a different pattern, a different version of the weave. But the reality is that the pattern we have is the one that exists. The Mosasaurus is gone. Its thread is a memory, a part of the finished work. This raises an interesting philosophical question. Is our fascination with the Mosasaurus a longing for a different past, a yearning for a world that was wilder and less certain? Or is it a way of confronting the power and permanence of the past? The idea that the tapestry of time is a complete and unchangeable work. The truth is, we don't really know for sure. The nature of time, whether it is a linear journey or a completed tapestry, is one of the great unsolved mysteries of science and philosophy. But the metaphor itself is a powerful one. It allows us to see the connections, to understand that the world of the Mosasaurus and the world of a modern dolphin are not two separate things, but two beautiful, intricate parts of the same grand design. The deep time of the past is not a foreign country. It is simply another room in the same house. And as we continue our journey, we will carry this understanding with us, seeing the echoes of the past in the living, breathing reality of the now. The tapestry of time, as we have imagined it, is a complete work. But the threads of that tapestry, the living species and ecosystems, are not static. They are dynamic and ever-changing in a constant state of flux. Tonight, we will turn our attention to the resilient heart of the ocean itself and explore how it might adapt to the return of a new monarch. We will discuss the principle of ecological succession and the profound capacity of life to find a new balance even in the face of a cataclysmic change. The modern ocean, for all its beauty and complexity, is a fragile thing. We have seen its fragility in the face of climate change, overfishing, and pollution. But it is also a place of immense resilience. The history of life on Earth is a story of great extinctions, of asteroid impacts, and volcanic eruptions. And in the wake of every disaster, life has always returned. New species have emerged, new ecosystems have formed, and a new balance has been found. This is a scientific concept known as ecological succession, and it is the key to understanding how the ocean would respond to a Mosasaurus. Ecological succession is the process of change in the species structure of an ecological community over time. It can be a slow, gradual process, or it can be triggered by a major disturbance. The extinction event that wiped out the dinosaurs and the mosasaurs was a disturbance of the highest order. The world was plunged into a kind of ecological darkness, a global catastrophe that wiped out a vast majority of life. But in the millions of years that followed, the ocean began to rebuild. Plankton and small fish returned, followed by larger fish, and then the first mammals to take to the sea. The great sharks and the first whales took their place, and a new ecosystem was born. It was a long, slow, patient process, a testament to the profound resilience of life. Now imagine the return of a Mosasaurus as a new kind of disturbance, not a global catastrophe, but a shock to the system. The initial impact would be felt in the food chain as we've discussed, but the ocean would not simply collapse. It would begin to adapt. The prey species, the whales and the fish, would evolve new defenses. They might change their migration routes to avoid the Mosasaurus's hunting grounds. They might evolve new camouflage or new social behaviors. The Red Queen hypothesis, which we touched on before, would begin to play out in a new and profound way. The Mosasaurus would be the new engine of evolution, a powerful force that would drive a new kind of arms race between predator and prey. This brings us to a little-known but fascinating scientific fact about the nature of ecosystems, the trophic pyramid. This is the idea that in any ecosystem, there is a large base of producers, plants and plankton, a smaller layer of primary consumers, herbivores, and an even smaller layer of secondary and tertiary consumers, carnivores. At the very top of this pyramid is the apex predator, the single species that has no natural predators of its own. The Mosasaurus would take its place at the very top of this pyramid, and in doing so, it would reshape the layers beneath it. Its predation on other species would in turn affect the layers beneath them. It would be a kind of ecological sculptor, carving out new forms and new relationships in the great living stone of the ocean. This raises an interesting and beautiful philosophical question. In our world, we have become accustomed to the idea that we are the only force of ecological change. We clear forests, we change the climate, we alter the course of rivers. The Mosasaurus, however, would be a new kind of ecological agent, a force of nature that is completely indifferent to our plans. Its changes would not be born of malice or intent. They would simply be a part of the natural process of an ecosystem finding its new equilibrium. The truth is, we don't really know for sure what that equilibrium would look like. It might be a world with fewer whales or with fish that are faster and more agile. It would be a different world, but it would not be a dead one. The resilient heart of the ocean would continue to beat, finding a new rhythm, a new balance, and a new kind of life. As we drift off to sleep tonight, let us contemplate this resilience. Let us imagine the quiet power of a world that can be broken and then heal itself. The Mosasaurus is a symbol of that power, a reminder that even after a great extinction, life will always find a way. The ocean's heart, its great resilient core, is not a static thing. It is a living, breathing testament to the power of change and the beautiful, elegant logic of ecological succession. We have imagined the Mosasaurus as a force of ecological change, a new king in the open seas. But where would this monarch truly reign? The vast, sunlit surface of the ocean. The world we are most familiar with is only a thin veneer. Beneath it lies a world of profound mystery and crushing pressure, a world we have only just begun to explore. Tonight, we will dive into this realm and explore the lure of the abyss, the final and most secure sanctuary for our ancient visitor. The abyss is not just a place, it's a concept. It is the deep, dark, lightless territory of the ocean, the part that remains largely unexplored. We know that life exists there, but we have only glimpsed a tiny fraction of its true diversity. The abyss is a world of permanent night, of bone-crushing pressure, and of strange alien life forms that have adapted to an environment that we would find completely inhospitable. For a creature like the Mosasaurus, a master of the deep, this realm would be its final fortress, its hidden kingdom. To understand the abyss, we must first understand a core scientific concept, the Hadal Zone. This is the deepest part of the ocean found in the trenches and canyons of the seafloor. The Hadal Zone is characterized by immense pressure, with some parts reaching pressures over 1,000 times that of the surface. This is a pressure so great that it would instantly crush a human body and most man-made submersibles. And yet life thrives there. Strange, unearthly fish and invertebrates exist in this world. Their bodies adapted to withstand a pressure that is almost beyond our comprehension. Could a Mosasaurus, a creature of immense power, have found a way to survive in this realm? It's an unlikely but fascinating possibility. This brings us to a specific and little-known scientific fact: the whale-fall ecosystem. When a whale dies, its immense body sinks to the ocean floor. This carcass, which can weigh many tons, provides a sudden massive influx of nutrients to the deep sea. It creates a temporary ecosystem that can last for years, with different species moving in to feed on the bones and the decaying flesh. For a Mosasaurus that has retreated to the deep, these whale falls would be a kind of fast food restaurant, a predictable and abundant source of nutrition in a world that is otherwise a food desert. Its body, built for power and speed in the open water, might not be perfectly adapted for the Hadal zone, but it would be perfectly adapted for the vast, dark territories just above it, the hunting grounds where it could wait for a meal to be delivered to its doorstep. This raises an interesting and profound question about our own place in the world. We as humans have conquered the surface of the planet. We have built our cities and our roads and our technologies. But the return of a Mosasaurus retreating to the abyss would be a stark reminder that there are parts of our world that we will never truly master. The abyss is a kind of internal unknown, a vast, dark territory that exists not in a distant galaxy, but right here on our own planet. It is a place that is as alien to us as the surface of Mars, and a place that in this hypothetical world would be ruled by a monarch from a different time. The lure of the abyss is not just a physical one, it's a metaphorical one. It's the lure of the unknown, the lure of the wild, and the lure of a truth that is both beautiful and terrifying, that our planet is larger and more mysterious than we can ever fully grasp. The Mosasaurus swimming alone in this great dark emptiness would be a living symbol of this truth. It would be a reminder that no matter how much we explore, how much we learn, and how much we conquer, there will always be parts of the world that remain wild, untamable, and forever out of our reach. So as we drift off to sleep, let us imagine that final dark sanctuary. Let us imagine a place of immense pressure and perpetual night, a place that is as old as time itself. And let us imagine a creature, a ghost from an ancient world, swimming through that silence, a silent king in a silent kingdom. It's a humbling thought, a beautiful thought, and a testament to the enduring mystery of our planet. We have imagined the Mosasaurus as a biological reality, a physical force, and a monarch of the abyss. But its return would not just be a change in the physical world. It would also be a change in our spiritual one. It would force us to confront the deep ancient echoes that exist not in the ocean, but in our own DNA. Tonight, we will reflect on the ghosts in our DNA, the deep-seated fears and fascinations that the Mosasaurus evokes in us, and the profound connection between all life on Earth. The human brain, for all its complexity, is a layered thing. At its core, we have the ancient primal parts that we share with our most distant relatives, the parts that react to danger, that feel fear, that understand the simple, brutal logic of predator and prey. These are the ghosts in our DNA, the memories of a time before we were us. The Mosasaurus as a concept touches on these deep ancient parts of our minds. It is the ultimate expression of the primordial fear of the unknown, of the dark water, and of a power that is greater than our own. This is a poetic way of understanding a core scientific concept, the reptilian brain. This is a term used to describe the oldest and most fundamental part of our brain, the brainstem and cerebellum, which is responsible for our most basic survival functions, our fight or flight response, our breathing, our heart rate. This part of our brain, in its essence, is a reptile's brain. It is the part of us that remembers a time when the world was a wilder, more dangerous place, and when the greatest threats were not abstract concepts, but physical forces of nature. The Mosasaurus, in this sense, is not just an ancient creature. It's an ancient fear, a living echo of a time that our reptilian brain remembers all too well. But our DNA holds more than just fear. It holds a kind of beautiful, profound interconnectedness. This leads us to a specific and little-known scientific fact, the genetic clock. This is the idea that the DNA of all living things evolves at a relatively constant rate. By comparing the DNA of two different species, we can estimate how long ago they shared a common ancestor. This is how we know, for example, that humans and chimpanzees shared a common ancestor about 6 million years ago. And if we were to trace our lineage back even further to the time of the dinosaurs and the mosasaurs, we would find a common ancestor with them as well. That ancestor might have been a tiny shrew-like mammal hiding in the shadows of a world ruled by giants. But the genetic truth is that it was our ancestor. This is a beautiful, humbling thought. It means that the Mosasaurus, that great ancient predator, is not a foreign entity. It is a distant cousin, a lost branch on the same great tree of life that we all belong to. Its DNA, in some small fundamental way, is a kind of echo of our own. This raises an interesting and profound question. Is our fascination with the Mosasaurus not just a fear of the great other, but a kind of recognition? Is it a kind of spiritual and genetic homecoming, a connection to a part of our family tree that we had long forgotten? The truth is, we don't really know for sure, but the idea itself is a powerful one. The ghosts in our DNA are a reminder that we are not separate from the natural world. We are a part of it, a continuation of a long, slow, patient story that has been playing out for billions of years. The Mosasaurus, in this sense, is not just a monster from a distant past. It is a symbol of our own deep biological history, a living testament to the fact that we are all in the end children of the same earth. As we drift off to sleep tonight, we can feel the quiet hum of that connection, the deep resonant echo of a time that our DNA remembers, even if our conscious minds do not. It is a profound and comforting truth. We have felt the ghost of the Mosasaurus in our DNA, a primal echo of fear and connection. But now, we must shift our perspective from the personal to the planetary. We have imagined the Mosasaurus as a force of chaos, a disruptor of the fragile balance of the modern sea. But what if its return were not a cataclysm, but a kind of healing? Tonight we will contemplate a balance reimagined, a new equilibrium in the ocean, where the Mosasaurus exists not as a monster, but as a crucial balancing force in a world that desperately needs one. The modern ocean, as we know, is a place of great imbalance. Human activity, in its vast and often unthinking scale, has tipped the scales in ways that are still not fully understood. Overfishing has decimated populations of top predators, creating a kind of ecological vacuum. Pollution has altered the very chemistry of the water. The great wild heart of the ocean has been diminished. The return of a Mosasaurus in this context would be a new kind of intervention, a non-human force that might, in its brutal and elegant way, begin to restore a kind of balance. This is a poetic way of understanding a core scientific concept, the trophic cascade in reverse. We have already discussed how a Mosasaurus would cause a trophic cascade by preying on modern species. But what if that cascade were a positive one? What if the Mosasaurus, in its relentless hunger, began to prey on the very species that have become overpopulated due to the absence of a top predator? For example, the Mosasaurus might help to control the population of large predatory fish that have thrived in the wake of the decline of sharks and other top predators. Its presence would force a kind of natural reset, a redistribution of power that might ultimately lead to a more diverse and resilient ecosystem. This brings us to a specific and little-known scientific fact about ecosystems, the concept of ecosystem engineering. This is the idea that some species, through their activities, can create, modify, or maintain a habitat. Beavers, for example, are ecosystem engineers, building dams that create new ponds and wetlands. A Mosasaurus, though, in a much different way, would be a kind of ecosystem engineer. Its movements, its hunting, and its very presence would create a new set of pressures and opportunities that would in turn shape the lives of every other creature in the sea. It would be a kind of living architect, a force of nature that designs a new kind of ecological blueprint. This raises an interesting and profound question. What is a monster? We have used this word to describe the Mosasaurus, but is it accurate? A monster in our human vocabulary is something that is evil, something that exists to harm us. But the Mosasaurus as a biological reality is neither evil nor malicious. It is simply a creature doing what it was evolved to do. Its predation is not an act of violence. It is an act of being. In this sense, the monster is not the Mosasaurus, but our own perception of it. We have become so accustomed to our role as the dominant species that the idea of a force that is greater than our own, a force that is completely indifferent to our existence, feels monstrous. The Mosasaurus, in its silent, powerful grace, would be a kind of living lesson, a teacher that would force us to redefine our understanding of our own place in the world. The truth is, we don't really know for sure what a reimagined balance would look like. It might be a world that we find more beautiful, or it might be a world that we find more terrifying, but it would be a world that is more in tune with its own deep ancient rhythms. The Mosasaurus, in its silent, powerful grace, would be a symbol of this truth. It would be a reminder that the world does not need us to find its own balance. It is a living, breathing testament to the fact that even in the face of our great human-made imbalances, the planet itself has its own way of healing its own way of finding a new kind of equilibrium. And in that, there is a strange and profound kind of hope. We have reached the end of our journey. We have traveled back in time, navigated the science of scale, plumbed the depths of the ocean, and confronted the ghosts in our own DNA. The Mosasaurus, once a simple creature from a forgotten past, has become something more. It has become a symbol of the wildness of our world, the deep mystery of the unknown, and the enduring power of life itself. Tonight, we will conclude our story by shifting from the tangible to the metaphorical, inviting you to consider the Mosasaurus not as a real creature, but as a dream, a poem, a beautiful and terrifying idea that exists in the quiet spaces of our minds. The Mosasaurus is a symbol of everything we have forgotten about the world. We live in an age of maps and satellites, an age where we believe we have charted every corner of the earth. But the Mosasaurus reminds us that there are still places, even on our own planet, that remain utterly and profoundly wild. It is a symbol of the deep untamed heart of nature, the part that is indifferent to our presence and our plans. It is a living, breathing testament to the fact that there are forces at play that are older and more powerful than our own. And in a world that often feels too small, too predictable, and too tamed, that is a beautiful and a necessary thought. The Mosasaurus is also a symbol of deep time, a concept so vast that it almost defies comprehension. Our human lives, our history, our great civilizations, they are a fleeting whisper against the backdrop of 70 million years. The Mosasaurus is a kind of anchor in this immensity, a physical and biological proof that the world has been here for a very, very long time, and that we are a new and very recent addition to its grand unfolding story. It is a humbling thought, a reminder that we are not the protagonists of this story, but merely one of its many beautiful, intricate, and fleeting characters. This leads us to a specific and little-known scientific fact about time and perception chronesthesia. This is the mental ability to travel through time, to relive past events, and to pre-experience future ones. While we can't physically travel through time, our minds can. Our journey tonight has been a kind of mental chronesthesia, a voyage back to a world that once was. The Mosasaurus is not in our world, but it is in our mind. We have conjured it into being with the tools of science and the power of our imagination. And in doing so, we have proven that the past is never truly gone. It exists in our imagination, in our science, and in the deep resonant hum of our own curiosity. This raises an interesting and final philosophical question. What does it mean to dream? We have spent the last few hours dreaming of a world with a Mosasaurus in it. Our journey has been a shared dream, a collective act of imagination. But what are dreams? Are they just random firings of neurons? Or are they a way for our minds to explore the impossible, to connect with the deep ancient parts of ourselves? The truth is, we don't really know for sure. The Mosasaurus, in its own way, is a kind of dream made real, a beautiful and terrifying idea that exists in the quiet space between our waking and our sleeping lives. So let the idea of the Mosasaurus gently fade from your mind. Let its great dark form slowly dissolve into the deep quiet blackness of the ocean. Let it become a kind of poetry, a memory, a beautiful and powerful idea that exists not in the world, but in the peaceful sleeping heart of your own consciousness. The journey is over, but the story of the Mosasaurus, the story of the wildness and the mystery of our world, is a story that will continue to exist as long as we continue to dream. I would like you to gently bring your awareness back to the place where you are now, to the soft sheets beneath you, to the quiet hum of the night, to the slow, steady rhythm of your own breath. The great dark ocean is still out there, and the tapestry of time continues to be woven. The story of the Mosasaurus is a part of that tapestry, a thread from an ancient time that we have gently touched upon tonight. The journey we took was a beautiful one, an exploration of science history and the deep, enduring mystery of life itself. I'd like to gently ask one last time, where is the place you're staying now? The time in that place at this very moment, how is it flowing? Wherever and whenever you are, I hope you feel a sense of peace, a quiet kind of comfort that comes from knowing that the world is a much bigger and more mysterious place than we can ever fully grasp. The night is a quiet sea, and we are all drifting upon it, carried by the slow, gentle currents of time. Sleep well, my companion, wherever and whenever you are. Sweet dreams.